Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Shatashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. I think you could give me the book. We also need a Samadhi's book, please. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today is the disappearance? Okay, disappearance of Devananda Pandit. So we'll just read about him before we read the Srimad Bhagavatam verse. Devananda Pandit. Alright, short biography here. Short and sweet. Sri Devananda Pandit. Living in Kulia during Sri Chaitanya's pastimes, Sri Devananda Pandit gave professional readings of Srimad Bhagavatam, tinged with Mayavad philosophy. One day, Srivas Pandit heard. That's one thing, that sometimes these Bhagavat Saptahas, a 7-day recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's in India. But of course, now when we say it's in India, it could be broadcasted all over the world, live via whatever, Zoom or other platforms. So you could say it's not just a problem in India, but now it could be broadcasted worldwide and become a worldwide problem. But sometimes, for example, in Srila Prabhupada's, when Prabhupada was physically here, in the 60s, 70s, there was a famous Bhagavatam reciter in Vrindavan, and he was very famous. And he was a Mayavadi. He was an impersonalist. Like, he didn't really accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or that we should become his devotees. But he's very famous. So but of course then there wasn't this issue of, he was in Vrindavan and given the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, but it was being broadcasted all over the world, live. But now, that's something that goes on. So, anyways, we have to be careful that that we're not hearing that we're hearing the Bhagavatam from a good source. So, yeah, from the Bhagavat. Hey, Bhagavat, yeah. One day, Srivas Pandit heard his Bhagavat Katha, began crying, and fell to the ground. Becoming disturbed by this display, the foolish disciples of Devananda threw Srivas out of the assembly. By silently observing this misbehavior of his disciples, Devananda committed the Hati Mata Aparad, the mad elephant offense of blaspheming a pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya. It's interesting that Srivas Pandit was listening to his recitation, despite it being stated here that it was tainted with Mayavad. And somehow or other, Srivas Pandit, even though hearing that, he fell on the ground in ecstasy. But here it's saying that the disciples of Devananda threw Srivas Pandit out, and Devananda seems he didn't do anything about it, and therefore he was implicated in this offense, Hati Mata Aparad, mad elephant offense, in which there's a nice creeper, little bhakti creeper. Of course, this is a metaphor. It's a nice bhakti creeper. This from the seed of devotion is planted. Right? Eventually, they'll sprout the fruit of love of God. So we have to fence around our bhakti lata creeper. Because it's very delicate, and in other words, our inspiration to engage in Krishna consciousness, our taste for Krishna consciousness, our whatever desires we have to engage in Krishna consciousness, very delicate. So Hati Mata fences that we offend devotees, we offend Vaishnavas there's different ways to offend Vaishnavas. You'd kill a Vaishnav, that's very severe. You could, most severe. You could criticize a Vaishnav within their mind. It's also an offense not to be happy when you see a Vaishnav. And, we mentioned this some time ago, but this idea of not feeling happy, okay, why don't we feel happy when we first see someone? Trivida Prabhu says we remember that he stole our prasadam. Yeah. Well, one thing is that it means we were speaking not so favorably about that person, maybe to somebody else. Oh yeah, this person did this person did. Or we were just thinking not so favorably about that person. In other words, we don't have fond feelings for them. So when they walk on the door, it's not so happy to see them. But we should have great feelings for the devotees and be happy to see them. Just as if we'd be happy to see our long-lost brother or something like that. All right. So he committed this offense, Hati Mata, so different offenses, and that's quite offensive. You throw Srivas Pandit out of the assembly, and he didn't even do anything about it. So, Later, by the mercy of Vrikeshwara Pandit, an intimate devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Devananda understood the divinity of Sri Krishna Chaitanya and surrendered to him. The Lord pardoned his offense and blessed him with bhakti. He serves in Krishna Lila as Bhaguri Muni. I'm not so familiar with this Bhaguri Muni, but maybe we can look that up. And Vrikeshwara Pandit, by his mercy, by the mercy of Vrikeshwara Pandit, Devananda understood, okay, Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Person, he surrendered. And Lord Chaitanya pardoned his offense and blessed him with love for Krishna. But Vrikeshwara Pandit, he's the one who danced, right? 72 hours? He dances a lot. He's one of the dancers. He'd be very valuable, member of our Rath Yatra, LA Rath Yatra, dancing. That's only 1 hour, right? 1 hour, an hour and a half or something. I mean, some of these Rath Yatras, I think, whatever, how long's the Puri one? 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours? Morning till evening, it's long Rath Yatra. But he could go for 72 hours, so he'd be a good Harinam man, devotee. So, all right, so Devananda Pandit ki jai. All right, so we'll move to the Bhagavatam. So if everybody could please repeat after me. Vipanas tu kriya shaktir bhuta prakritir avyaya shakyadishaha pumams tva atra pravishto navabudyate vipanastu kriya shaktir bhuta prakritir avyaya shakyadisha pumams tvatra pravishto navabudyate vipanastu kriya shaktir bhuta prakritir avyaya shakyadisha pumams tvatra pravishto navabudyate vipanastu kriya shaktir bhuta prakritir avyaya shakyadisha pumams tvatra pravishto navabudyate. Word by word translation. Vipanaha, stores. To then. Kriya Shakti, the energy for activities, or the working senses. Bhuta, the 5 gross elements. Prakriti, the material elements. Avyaya, eternal. Shakti, the energy. Adishaha, controller. Puman, man. 2, then. Atra, here. Pravishtaha, entered. Na, does not. Avabuddhite, becomes subjected to knowledge. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. Purport. The living entity enters the material creation with the aid of the fire elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and thus his body is formed. Although the living entity is working from within, he is nonetheless unknown. The living entity enters the material creation, but because he is bewildered by the material energy, he appears to be hidden. The bodily conception of life is prominent because of ignorance, navabuddhite. Intelligence is described in the feminine gender, but owing to her prominence in all activities, she is described in this verse as Adisha, the controller. The living entity lives by means of fire, water, and food grains. It is through the combination of these 3 that the body is maintained. Consequently, the body is called Prakriti, material creation. All the elements gradually combine to form flesh, bone, blood, and so on. All these appear as various apartments. It is said in the Vedas that the digested foods are ultimately divided into 3. The solid portion becomes stool, and the semi-liquid portion turns into flesh. The liquid portion turns yellow and is again divided into 3. One of these liquid portions is called urine. Similarly, the fiery portion is divided into 3, and one is called bone. Out of the 5 elements, fire, water, and food grains are very important. These 3 are mentioned in the previous verse, whereas sky, ether, and air are not mentioned. This is all explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 20. Prakritim purusham chaiva vidya nadi ubhavapi vikaram gunang chaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavan. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature. Prakriti, material nature, and Purusha, the living entity, are eternal. When they both come in contact, there are different reactions and manifestations. All of them should be considered the results of the interaction of the 3 modes of material nature. Om Vikara Devananda Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Meditamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Karitavachalam Pangam Langai Tekirim Yakripatamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinitaranam Vancha Kapadubhishta Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gauru Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. So also today is Ekadashi, and fasting completely, nirjal, no water, no food, or fasting at least from grains and beans. And Prabhupada mentions in the Nectar Devotion that especially on Ekadashi days, there's one should engage in more hearing and chanting about Krishna, and also remembering the pastimes of Govinda. And there's also some there's also some indication in some conversation Srila Prabhupada had with his disciples that Srila Prabhupada liked his disciples to chant 25 rounds on Ekadashi. There's some conversations like that. And sometimes gurus, Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they recommend their disciples to chant 25 rounds on Ekadashi. Now, of course, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would say in relation to staying back at the temple and hearing and chanting and fasting and all that, he would say, oh, well, better the devotees, they just take grains and go out and preach. If they're feeling so weak that I can't go out, I'm feeling so weak, then okay, better take grains and go out. Now, of course, sometimes that language is used to indicate the importance of something, the importance of preaching, just like Srila Prabhupada told Harikesh one time, because Harikesh was really attached to Srila Prabhupada's being his personal secretary or servant, and Prabhupada wanted him to go preach. Prabhupada said, there's no food there, Harikesh. All they have is meat, Prabhupada said, he said, he said, that doesn't matter. Srila Prabhupada said, that doesn't matter. He said, you should go. And then Srila Prabhupada, and then Harikesh said, oh, Prabhupada, what about my consciousness? And Prabhupada said, damn your consciousness. Just go and preach. So he left. Now, of course, the Prabhupada, is there any location in modern times, in modern world, where there's just meat? I mean, I don't know, maybe somewhere. But generally, you could find something that's suitable for vegetarians. Even in Russia, when Srila Prabhupada went to Russia, it was hard to find fruits and vegetables, but he found them. So that type of language, it's like, okay, well, the devotee's saying, okay, well, great, now I could, right? I wanted to have a reason not to fast from beans and grains. Now I'll go have some beans and chapatis or something, go out on Sankirtan. But the principle's there. So, in one time, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had a disciple, and a lot of the disciples were staying back to fast and to chant and engage in those activities. And one of the disciples, they just had Ekadashi Prasadam. I mean, they didn't do a full fast. They had Ekadashi Prasadam, and they went out and tried to spread Krishna consciousness. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was pleased with that. So yeah, it's Ekadashi, special day to make advancement in different ways. One devotee, I'm not sure where this came from, but apparently Lord Brahma, he was at the beginning of the creation. It's about this bhakta who's not so bright. And Lord Brahma, at the beginning of the creation, he said, because he's putting everything together like we hear here, right? All the material elements, the fire and false ego and mind, intelligence, all these different things. So Lord Brahma asked this bhakta that, would you like some brains? And then the bhakta said, oh, no, thank you, Lord Brahma. It's Ekadashi, that's okay. I'm not taking any grains. So, anyways, Lord Brahma was saying brains, but this bhakta was saying that he thought he said grains and said no, it's Ekadashi. So, anyways, apparently the guy didn't get a brain after that. Anyway, so here we see within this verse and purport, and in many verses and purports in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very detailed, very intricate, and especially we see which will eventually get close. We'll start reading and speaking on the 5th canto, which Yeah, it's very intricate, very detailed. And you could say that's the beauty of the Bhagavatam. That one of the aspects of the beauty of the Bhagavatam is that it's so detailed, just like the spiritual world. It's not anything vague, it's very detailed. The hellish planets, it's very detailed. Everything in the Srimad Bhagavatam is very detailed. So, here, there's another detailed description. And so to think about these things, to contemplate these things, to try to figure these things out, this is what it means. This is a part of being a human being. We want to figure things out. We want to see how things work. We just don't want to be like just like some type of, you say, biological, machine reacting to stimulus. Okay, I'm hungry, my belly is growling. Okay, fill it up. Or my eyes want to see something beautiful. Okay, let's see something beautiful. Or my nose wants to, and that's it. But we want to understand things from so many different angles of vision. And so you could say, and it's a great mystery for most people, mystery of life. In other words, a mystery means they don't really know. They don't really know. They're uncertain. And this uncertainty of life, they don't know they don't really understand, okay, why am I here, what's the goal of life, or anything like that. Or what to speak of the future, this brings great anxiety. This brings untold anxiety. That, like especially, we just passed 2020, and now of course 2021, similar things are going on. But it was a great year of anxiety, actually, because people, they don't know what the future holds. I was talking with one devotee the other day. They're here, coming to do service, and they're bringing up the point that, it's great fear not knowing in the future. But they're bringing the point up that, but that's always the case. That is always the case. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? Krishna, but what mortal being knows what's going to happen in the future? No one does, practically. Who's it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Who knows absolutely what's going to happen? Yeah, the details. That's hard. We know the general principles, what's going to happen, but how things generally end and so on, but the details. But within 2020, and now we're going to 2021, it becomes more clear that we don't know what's going to happen, because you could say things are more pushed in people's faces. Okay, disease and death and so many different things are just forcibly pushed on people. Or, for example, okay, when is all this going to end? Right? When are things going to get back to normal, or what we say to be normal? And okay, there's some indications from the health, this organization, that organization, this doctor, that doctor, which is another cause of anxiety, because there's like an ocean of opinions. But it's not absolutely clear, and people know that. At least it seems they know that. Of course, I don't want to make a sweeping statement, but so this not knowing is, would you say, ignorance is a great cause of fear and anxiety. Now, what's the Vaishnava solution? What's the devotee's solution to this? What's the philosophy? How are we supposed to deal with this? Well, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda Sarva Karna Karnam. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's not just the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's the Supreme Controller. So behind everything is Krishna. And now that may be hard to understand. How is Krishna behind everything that's going on? But that's a philosophy. And also Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Sudidam Sarvabhutanam Gatvamam Shantam Richati. So Krishna is the Supreme Controller, the Supreme Enjoyer, Proprietor, right? So that's the answer. In other words, what can we control? We cannot control. What can America? I mean, there's some, you could say, minute ability to control certain things in our life, in the society, in the government. There's some control, but ultimately, that supreme control, that doesn't belong to us at all. And therefore, a devotee doesn't really bother with all of this. That, okay, certain things happen. Certain things happen to the body, certain things happen to the mind, certain things happen within our community, within the country, in the world, and they just happen. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to control it? No. Or are we going to control it? No. So in other words, devotees, they give up this conception of, okay, well, I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer, I'm the proprietor, and they give all that up, and therefore they're able to experience peace amidst the greatest calamities. So that's a great that having that ability to do that is a great solace, to feel peace. Now, of course, we're not after peace, but some people are. It's a what do you call it, like a side benefit. It's not the main goal, obviously. And also this idea that we have, you have your plan, I have my plan, and Krishna has his plan. So the idea is to find out what is Krishna's plan and try to become in line with that. So in this way, we don't become distracted by the upheavals of this world, which there are a lot of upheavals, and there will be. And that's the nature of the world. I mean, if you study history books, practically it's just packed. Every country of the world, there's no time where there wasn't upheavals in this world. So it's just the nature of this world, and it's not going to go away. So the idea is that, but still, we have to live in this world, and we have to exist in this world right now. So therefore, a devotee, instead of focusing on all these phenomena, the external phenomena, the external circumstances, the external upheavals, and becoming distracted by them, they focus on Krishna consciousness. They focus on trying to elevate themselves and others to pure Krishna consciousness. And that's the best utilization of time. And you could say that's the purpose behind this creation, which people don't know. Like, for example, okay, there's there's it's described here. Okay, flesh and blood and bones and fire and water and food and sky and desires and there's anger and frustration, intolerance, tolerance, and there's so much going on within our consciousness and within everybody else's consciousness. So, okay, what's the point of all of it? What's the point? What's the purpose of creation? Is it just like a random thing? But the Bhagavatam says no, it's not. There's a purpose behind it. Just as there's a purpose behind everything else, there's a purpose behind this microphone to amplify a person's voice. There's a purpose behind this clock, right? We tell the time. Alarm clock, 108. Nice alarm. Right. Auspicious number. Somebody did that, I think. There's a purpose behind the cartels, right? We make music. There's a purpose behind the lights to give us, so we could see. Behind the sun, right? So there's grow vegetables and fruits and give us life. So there's a purpose behind everything. And then people say, oh, there's no purpose behind this body. It's kind of here. Or it's coming to have a shallow purpose, right? Or just kind of gratify the senses. So there's a purpose behind this creation, and you could say it remains a mystery. It remains unknown to vast majorities of people. But at least for, I suspect, all of us who are listening to this in person or online, that we have some understanding, we have some inkling that, in other words, solving the mystery of life, what is it all about? We have some, at least theoretical, hypothetical, or some realized knowledge in that regard, or maybe absolutely realized knowledge. But until we're lacking, if we're lacking in that department, if we're not, if we haven't figured out the mystery of life, we're not aligning ourselves, then we'll feel there'll be bitterness. And bitterness, anger, which anger and bitterness, they go together. And there's many people in the world who are quite bitter. And in many ways, I could fully understand why. It's things just don't work out sometimes like we want, so we become bitter. But and also within the devotee world, there's many bitter devotees. So, but if anybody's not going to be bitter, devotees shouldn't be bitter. It's a waste of time. It's just not necessary. And in other words, we should feel grateful. We should feel we should feel happy, and we shouldn't feel bitter. Now you can say, oh, this devotee wronged me, that devotee wronged me, I made this mistake, I made that mistake, I should have done this, I shouldn't have done that, whatever. There's so many reasons, we have a whole list why I should be bitter. But that list, you could write it on a piece of paper, crumple it up, just throw it in the trash can. Because human life is too sacred and too important to be bitter. It's not good. So yeah, self-realization, God-realization, there's a purpose behind everything, and therefore there's a purpose behind the body. And not only that, like here, we're hearing about all these different elements and different, how things are working under the control of material nature. So, again, like, okay, you buy a can of beans or something, it's like, so there's some instruction. Okay, you get the can opener, you open it up, put it in the microwave, nuke it for 3 minutes, and then that's it. You're good to go. And we've been getting donations from Trader Joe's, and I'm actually surprised. But sometimes we get these bags of Brussels sprouts, bags, plastic bags. And there's instruction, okay, if you want to steam it, just, I don't know why people want to steam something with a plastic bag on it, or put it in the microwave, plastic bag. But so there's instructions, there's manuals how to do things, how to use things. So similarly for this world, it's not just like a free for all, figure it out yourself. There's a purpose behind creation. It was created, somebody created it, and there's manuals how to live, how to be happy. Ayurveda, right? How to have good health. That's just health-wise, but how to be spiritually healthy. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. So if we're able to just say bite the bullet, buckle down, try to focus our energies on understanding, trying to figure out these higher topics, and then aligning ourselves, we'll do ourselves a great service. And aside from doing ourselves a great service, we'll do others a great service too. Because people need more, could say, saintly people. That's the world's lacking, saintly people. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes. Damodar Kumar Prabhu. And then maybe if there's some online questions.
I have a question. So in the beginning of your class you mentioned different ways we can offend a Vaishnav. Mm-hmm. And so, and just now you're talking about how one shouldn't be bitter. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason. And we live in a community of people, so it happens even though we don't want it to. We may step on each other's toes, we may accidentally offend each other, we may intentionally offend each other. Yeah. But there's a natural tendency to hold resentment towards a person if you feel like you've been wronged.
Yeah.
And then again, it's an offense to not be happy when you see a Vaishnav.
Yeah.
And so, how do you balance the two, where you may say you were wronged, and there's some natural emotions that spur from that, but yet the saintly thing to do would be to forgive that person and just let go. But simultaneously, I've seen advanced Vaishnavas intentionally resent people because they feel as if that person hasn't learned their lesson, or didn't, wants him to recognize his mistake, or whatever it may be. So I just wanted to ask, what would be your opinion on that?
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, yeah, we may offend devotees sometimes on accident, or whatever. Srila Prabhupada, he one thing is, one devotee asked Prabhupada one time, "Oh, Prabhupada, I'm always offending devotees. So, if I had to always go up and ask everybody for forgiveness, I'd be doing that all day long, because I'm always offending devotees. I'd be, please forgive me, please forgive me. I spend my whole day like that." And then Prabhupada said, "Well, that's why that's what the bowing down to the devotees in the morning is. Vancha kalpadribhishya kripa. Please forgive me for whatever offenses I've committed, knowingly or unknowingly." You could say like small things. Now, of course, if there's bigger things, we may have to, go to the devotee and beg forgiveness and offer some service and hopefully pacify them. But even then, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in the Harinam Chintamani that that's a prescription. You go to them, you offer obeisances, please forgive me, and service. But he said even then, sometimes the devotees, they may be really upset and not automatically or immediately forgive them. And you could say, oh, well, why is that? Well, maybe they feel that the apology wasn't sincere. Maybe they feel that it was sincere, but it wasn't really sincere enough. Or maybe they feel that, yeah, this person's really not understanding. But then again, you could say, oh, well, they may be feeling that way, but is it actually valid or this and that? So yeah, it's very, say, complex, human interactions in general. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that if the Vaishnava is still angry and upset with us, then what do we do? He said you should chant Harinam, chant, 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 and eventually that offense will be purged. So, yeah, there is. So it's hard to say. I mean, there's different ways in dealing with different situations. So, but yeah, I mean, there is a case maybe of like you said, of a devotee not immediately forgiving somebody, maybe for, you could say, like instructive purposes. Yeah. So you could say to teach them a lesson or something. But of course that everything a devotee does should be out of compassion. So for example, Prabhupada would sometimes be very strong with his disciples, and he would say, very strong words to them sometimes. But he did it out of compassion. He did it out of love for the disciple. Just like, okay, a kid runs out into the street. The mother runs out into the traffic. Mother runs out, grabs the kid, and really chastises the kid. But she does it out of love, So Prabhupada would do that. But then again, Prabhupada would sometimes just not even say anything. In other words, he would kind of like ignore one of his disciples or some of his disciples at times, which some devotees say that was even more painful. But Prabhupada wasn't doing that out of malice or anything. He was doing it out of compassion. He wanted to help them. And Prabhupada's anger also, so we could use anger in the service of Krishna, in the service of devotees. We have to be very careful. It's like very. But in the case of Prabhupada, because he had control over his anger, he would show some anger towards one of his disciples to instruct them, and then the disciple would leave the room, and then Prabhupada would just, kind of cool down and just go like nothing happened. So in other words, it wasn't that Prabhupada was consumed by the anger. But yeah, in relation to feeling bitter, I mean, it's not recommended. Yeah, it's not recommended that we hold grudges, we feel bitter towards Vaishnavas, and a lot of this can be solved by just developing our love for the Vaishnavas. Because if we really have affection for somebody, ultimately we can't feel bitter with them. It can't continue for long because we have a close relationship. And part of that, having a close relationship, we have to reveal our minds to the other devotees. Sit down and say, I'm really disturbed. I don't know, maybe it's my imagination, maybe this, that, but, you said this, you said that. And you kind of like work it out, communication. That's a huge part of relationships in general, successful relationships, that there's some communication. Yeah, so anyways, it's kind of a big topic, but one devotee, he wrote a book on this, Bhakti Tirtha Swami. He wrote a book, it's called, oh God, what is it called? I'm forgetting what it's called. I think, yeah, not a good sign. What? Anyone remember what that book's called? Well, it's about this Vaishnava Aparad. It goes through the whole thing. What is Vaishnava? There's questions and answers. There's cases from Shastra. So it's a very beautiful book. But anyways, he wrote so many books. But if you look that book up, that's one of them. It's not so big. And there's also many lectures and seminars and different things, regarding this. But anyways, that's a little something that I offered. So I hope that you're welcome. Does anybody? Any other questions or comments? In person or online? Tapas?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Is that
Devananda?
Oh, Hare Krishna.
I have my headphones on, so I don't know if you can hear me. It seems like you can.
Yes.
Can I say something?
Yes, we could hear you.
Thank you. Dandavats, and thank you for a wonderful class, Balaram.
Thank you.
It was a nice question that Damodar Kumar Prabhu raised, and your answer and his question inspired a couple of thoughts.
Okay.
One was that he made mention of sometimes we see senior advanced devotees holding a grudge. And I just want to comment on that. First of all, we are respectful to everyone, and we observe Vaishnava etiquette in relationship to our seniors, etc. Respect is the foundation. But in Krishna consciousness, when we're trying to understand our association and our own consciousness and activities, it's not like Krishna consciousness is simply black and white. Like, I'll just use myself as an example. I may be seen by some as a senior devotee, but I'm very flawed. I'm not a liberated Vaishnava, 100% focused on Krishna. So the modes have their effects on me sometimes. So if you see me acting, speaking in a way that's less than the standard, then that's something you should pray for or tolerate or forgive me. That's not the example we want to follow. Prabhupada and the Shastras set the example, and that's what we have to shoot for. It's just we're all in the shower, and so it's not surprising when we see, somebody do something or insult us or hurt our feelings or something. We're surrounded by devotees, and our karma is going to manifest basically in the family of devotees. So we can't be surprised that, grudges or mistakes or arguments arise amongst the family. That's how it works. But in terms of holding the grudge, Bhishma Dev in the first canto says that forgiveness is the solution to overcoming anger. It's a very important quality. And we should know that all that's just they're the instruments of our karma. I deserve it, and Krishna's finally are kindly helping me understand that. And the last point I'll say, forgive me if this is too long, but Bhakti Tirtha Swami encouraged us to see our family and associates as the ones who are going to be by our bedside when we leave this body. And we certainly don't want to have bad feelings where they will not want to give us the support and the association to help us in the final test. So we should deal with, communicate with, or at least internally forgive. We shouldn't go to bed holding a grudge against any of our Prabhus.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that comment. Yeah, like you said, forgiveness, tolerance. Like, for example, why do people become angry? It's because they have a hard time tolerating certain situations or people or whatever, so become angry. So part of, you could say, sattva or sattva gun or Brahminical life is to be tolerant and also to be forgiving. So, yeah, therefore the mode of goodness Prabhupada stressed, right, over and over, and then over again. So, but anyways, yeah, thank you very much, Rajendraనందన Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Jai. Okay.
Prabhu, we also have Madhusudan Prabhu with us.
Jai. Did you want to say something, Madhusudan Prabhu?
No, I didn't want to say anything, but I would like to say. It was a very nice class.
Oh, thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
I'm very thankful to Tapas, who helped me with the with the Zoom because yesterday it was really choppy, and so I spent a lot of time last night and helped me, and it was perfect today. So.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, we could hear you quite well too. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice to hear you. Okay, Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Akadashi Vrat ki Jai.